This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to see is not a news broadcast.
It was one of the boldest breakouts in Oklahoma history. 19-year-old Travis Duncan and two escaped prisoners led state troopers on a frantic high-speed chase that ended in a wild shootout and Travis Duncan's disappearance. For more than 3 years, Stephen Marfio has searched for his wife, Doreen. She mysteriously vanished in 1990, but police believe Marfio's concern is a clever smokescreen intended to cover up his own involvement in his wife's disappearance. For 500 years, it's been one of the world's most famous portraits, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. But her identity has long been a mystery. Tonight, a controversial new theory. Could the person behind the enigmatic smile be Leonardo himself? When Raymond Young vanished off the coast of Louisiana, his family assumed he had drowned. But authorities are convinced that Young is very much alive and enjoying the good life thanks to millions of dollars scammed from the government. Join me for these intriguing cases. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery. This story is about one of law enforcement's worst nightmares. 3 young criminals on the road with a truck full of weapons and nothing to lose. At the apex of this explosive triangle was 19-year-old Travis Wade Duncan, whose family had lived in central Oklahoma for 4 generations. In more than 100 years, not one of the Duncans had ever been in trouble with the law, until Travis came along. In April of 1992, Travis Duncan was an apprentice auto repairman in Seminole, Oklahoma. He had just moved into his own apartment. After one minor legal scrape in Texas, Travis had maintained an excellent work record for nearly a year.
Travis was a quiet young man. He'd get in a little mischief now and then, but growing up, he was a good kid, and from a good family there.
But in June of 1992, Travis Duncan was arrested for stealing guns from his employer. Travis claimed he had bought the guns. He said he had no idea they were stolen, much less stolen from his boss. Bail was set at $25,000. Duncan's family could not afford to post bond, and he was incarcerated at the Seminole County Jail.
In you go.
He appeared to be a little nervous to be in jail. Travis was the kind that was very quiet. He never did cause any trouble at all. He was just a real quiet type, kind of kept to himself.
Another prisoner at the jail was 19-year-old John Fisher.
Hey, Joe!
According to law enforcement officials, Fisher was by turns charismatic and crazy.
I'm ready to this bed, I'm ready to this cell, I'm ready to everybody. I'm out of here.
Fisher was arrested on a murder charge, first-degree murder.
Now you relax.
John's goal in life was to be the drug lord of Oklahoma. He was constantly fantasizing about and telling and bragging to other people that he was in with the Medellin cartel of South America, that he had bukus of money, just any amount you had. He had several accounts that had hundreds of thousands of dollars in it. Most people knew he was fantasizing.
But Travis Duncan was not most people. Naive and gullible, he was an easy mark for John Fisher. The two would forge an unholy alliance.
I'm getting out of here. I got $200,000 in a bank in Oklahoma. I got guns, I got a car, everything.
Fisher was the kind that would look you right in the face and tell you exactly how he felt. He was a leader among the other inmates. Everybody looked up to him.
Oklahoma's mine. 6 months out of here, Oklahoma's mine.
I always considered Fisher to be an escape risk just by his actions, and he would come straight out and admit it, that he would escape if he had the chance.
I'm gonna run this place.
For weeks, John Fisher filled Travis Duncan's head with his wild ideas.
It's mine.
Then on August 18, 1992, Duncan's bail was reduced after his parents hired a new lawyer. Travis Duncan was released on the condition that he live with his mother and father. But Duncan insisted on moving back to his own apartment. Over his parents' objections, he took his sister's pickup truck and left. No one knows where Travis Duncan went, only what he did.
Travis manufactured Molotov cocktails, different things, loaded up the back end of the pickup with all types of ammunition, 9mm pistols, shotguns, all different types of things, some camping equipment, and food, water, things to live off of if they had to hide out for a while.
Seminole County Jail, 5:30 p.m. the next day.
Hey, Travis.
Hey, what's up?
Not much. Hey, you mind if I go over and look at Travis's pickup?
Absolutely not. Just finish up what you're doing.
Clint?
Hey, Travis.
Hey, you want some cigarettes?
Yeah. Thanks.
Let's go.
Don't move. Turn around.
When he pulled the gun on me, I was frightened. He also told me if I didn't cooperate with him, that he would shoot me.
This job ain't worth your life. Move!
Duncan was familiar with the jail routine. He knew that at this hour, only the jailer would be on duty.
In! Take off your shirt. Hurry! Boy, take off that shirt. Give it to me now! Don't move, boy. Don't you move, boy.
Duncan quickly found the keys to the other cell. He lost no time freeing John Fisher.
Don't you move, boy! Fish, you ready?
I'm ready. I was born ready.
Let's go, man.
Come
now!
on. Come on. Come on.
Fisher tried to turn the escape into a mass jailbreak, but only one other prisoner, Timothy Johnson, was willing.
I think it came as a surprise to Fisher that Travis did this, showing up at just the quick moment that he did. We were prepared for a break, for an escape from the inside. We never dreamed of one coming from the outside on us.
It was approximately 30 minutes before we knew of the escape, and a general broadcast was sent out over the escape with the vehicle description and the occupants. The highway patrols, the police units up on the interstate, picked them up on radar running high rate of speed, and we were able to monitor the traffic at that point and notify them of who they were after and what the circumstances was.
On August 19th, I was notified by my troop headquarters of a vehicle traveling at high speed on I-40. The vehicle was occupied by 3 white males, and we set up a roadblock to attempt to intercept the vehicle as it came through. As they came around the curve, got within a visual sighting of our roadblock, the driver, Travis Duncan, then accelerated to about 100 miles an hour. I jumped in my patrol car and began pursuing the pickup. They continued east on I-40, running about 100 miles an hour. As I caught up to the pickup, Fisher began to lean out the window and point the shotgun at my patrol car as I was pursuing him. Every time he'd lean out and try to draw a bead on my unit, then I would go to the left or the driver's side of the pickup, get as far over as I could, get out of the line of fire. This is something that you expect to see on the movies, but you don't really expect it to happen to you.
By 7:30 p.m., the 3 fugitives heading due east had rampaged along a 150-mile stretch of Interstate 40 at speeds of up to 100 miles per hour. Just 24 miles from the Arkansas border, they headed for Kerr Lake, an area which the troopers knew well, but the fugitives did not.
We exited the interstate, started south on the county road. As we did, Fisher leaned out the passenger window and threw what appeared to be a beer bottle up into the air, like he was going to try to throw something through the windshield of my patrol car. That Molotov cocktail failed to ignite because it hit the road. The wind, the high speed, blew the wick out. All it was doing was smoldering.
Seconds later, Fisher lobbed another homemade bomb out of the truck. It too failed to detonate.
As we entered the park area, I began to crowd them at high rate of speed again to push them, keep them from making a left turn to go back to the east. At that point, I had them going straight south into a closed area where there was a big steel gate, and I knew they'd have to either stop at the gate or they would crash through this heavy steel gate.
A fierce firefight broke out. Incredibly, no one was wounded, even though 70 rounds were fired.
The vehicle had over 2,000 rounds of ammunition in it after it crashed. There were about 7 Molotov cocktails and some black powder pipe bombs in the vehicle. There were firearms, there was camping gear. So they had every intentions of going to the woods and not returning to jail. You don't have time to fear anything. The adrenaline's pumping so hard. But your mind's rushing, you know. I hope I told my kids that I love them before I came to work today.
At around 7:45 p.m., Fisher, Duncan, and Johnson fled into the woods. Unwitting, they had trapped themselves on a peninsula jutting into the lake. By nightfall, the State Highway Patrol, working with local law enforcement agencies, had attempted to seal off all possible escape routes. Finally, the Oklahoma Lake Patrol was called in.
Now, don't shoot!
Your hands up over your head! Turn around!
Run off, don't
Turn
shoot!
around! Walk backward toward the boat!
Just before 10 p.m., Fisher and Johnson were cornered. They claimed Travis Duncan had been shot and was lying dead in the woods. But later they admitted that Duncan had, in fact, gone off on his own.
I transported Mr. Fisher back to the county jail in my patrol car. As we pulled into the county jail, Mr. Fisher looked me in the eye and he said, "You know, you really are a nice guy." He said, "I don't want you to take this all personal." He said, "For people like me and you, this is all in a day's work." Which I stated, it may be in a day's work for him, but it is definitely not in a normal day's work for me. We kept the area contained for nearly 3 days, hoping to find Duncan. We used tracking dogs. We did searches in case he had in fact been shot and was down in the woods. The place has been thoroughly combed. It was combed in a grid search area over and over again. We've had a mounted patrol in there on horseback to search all the wood areas. To no avail. We're unable to locate him. No signs that he's in there. There was no evidence to indicate that he'd been shot.
1 month later, police discovered a badly decomposed male body on the south shore of Kerr Lake. He was a missing camper who'd been shot through the head at approximately the same time Travis Duncan disappeared. Police now theorize that Duncan swam across the lake. He then murdered the camper and used his truck to escape. Update. On May 5th, 1994, Travis Wade Duncan finally came home to Seminole County, Oklahoma, 5 days after he was arrested in Boise, Idaho. Thanks to a tip from an alert viewer, Duncan's life on the run is finally over.
We believe that he went from Oklahoma to North or South Carolina, has went into Washington and Oregon, went to Hawaii, was in Arizona prior to being arrested in Boise, Idaho. So he had traveled around doing odd jobs, living from one state to another.
Once in custody, Duncan willingly revealed the details of his escape from Kerr Lake.
Travis told me that after the crash, he stayed in the woods, traveled through the woods until he came to the edge of the water on Kerr Lake. He stayed hid in the bushes until about an hour after dark, and then he swam a cove, which would be approximately a half mile wide, and then came up and stayed in the tree line and walked a mountain line out. Then he was able to catch a ride and go east from that area. I'm delighted that he's behind bars. That kind of ends this story, and I'm completely satisfied with the results that nobody was injured. He was apprehended, and he's facing the years in the penitentiary that he's looking at.
On September 10, 1991, Detective Pat Brennan of the Philadelphia Police was stunned to receive not one, but 3 telephone calls from a convicted rapist named Julius Patterson. Out of the blue, Patterson confessed that he and his girlfriend, Paulette Height, had killed 2 people.
He was like a man on a mission. He was out to convince me and anyone else that would listen to him that what he had to say was real, and he was out to make the police act on it. With this urgency in his voice and the detail to what he was saying to us, just made me feel that everything he was saying was the truth and would be founded.
Patterson said one of the victims was an elderly man named Hall Luther Gordon, who had mysteriously disappeared in 1988.
How do you know he was telling the truth?
Patterson claimed that the remains of the other victim could be found buried in the basement of a Philadelphia row house. Incredibly, he even admitted that this victim was his own sister. Julius Patterson had been telling the truth. Testing would later confirm that the bones found in the basement were those of his mentally handicapped younger sister, Jessie. These pictures of Julius Patterson and Paulette Height were taken by a bank ATM camera in 1991. Authorities believe that the pair may have stolen as much as $150,000 in Social Security benefits from their 2 victims, both before and after they were murdered. Following our most recent broadcast of this story, a former employer of Paulette Height called our phone center to report that Height had been working in a fast food restaurant in Cliffside Park, New Jersey, under an assumed name. Here's what happened next, according to Philadelphia Police Lieutenant Joseph Whitty.
It gave us a Social Security number she used, and the FBI tracked that Social Security number to a welfare recipient in New York City. FBI agents in New York City Police Department staked out the location where she was to pick up her checks. At that time, both Julius Patterson and Paulette Height were apprehended.
After the arrest, Julius Patterson led police to this empty warehouse in North Philadelphia, where he said he had left the partial remains of Hall Luther Gordon. Police records confirmed that some human bones had been found there in 1989. The police now believe that they were the remains of Hall Luther Gordon. 3 weeks later, Patterson led police back to the same area, claiming that he had buried yet another victim there. During the search, the unexpected happened.
While behind the factory, he assaulted one of the detectives, knocking him down, and then ran down the adjacent railroad tracks and jumped off a railroad trestle, which was about 10 feet tall, onto a street, and then made his escape.
3 days later, Julius Patterson was captured at an intersection in North Philadelphia. When he was apprehended, Patterson was standing at a bus stop wearing severed handcuffs concealed under a coat. Next, a startling new theory about the model for one of the world's great paintings, the Mona Lisa. Her face and smile have captured imaginations for nearly 500 years. She has inspired poets, painters, and musicians alike. She is, of course, the Mona Lisa. the masterwork of the master artist, Leonardo da Vinci. Through the centuries, millions have been drawn to the mystery and beauty surrounding the portrait. Accepted art history has it that the model for the Mona Lisa was the wife of a wealthy Italian lord. Some say that the loss of a child accounts for her sad, captivating expression, but no one knows for sure. According to legend, Leonardo da Vinci was so enamored of the Mona Lisa that he carried the painting with him everywhere he went for the last 2 decades of his life. When he passed away in 1519, the secret of the Mona Lisa's identity went with him to the grave, providing generations of scholars fodder for a lively debate. Recently, however, a computer analysis of the portrait may have uncovered a startling clue to the Mona Lisa's identity, a clue which has set the art world on its ear. Lillian Schwartz, co-author of the Computer Artist's Handbook, pioneered the use of the computer in art. In 1986, Lillian and a colleague were working with a new computer program which involved comparing 2 digitized images.
All right, and would you call me when you get something we can look at?
Sure.
Okay.
By pure coincidence, Lillian had fed into the computer a self-portrait of Leonardo da Vinci and the Mona Lisa. When the self-portrait was reversed and placed beside the Mona Lisa, a single face emerged. The results left Lillian Schwartz flabbergasted.
This was an incredible match. When I pointed this out, I said, my God, I can look at this, look at this. I mean, Leonardo probably used himself for the model for the Mona Lisa. And he said, no, 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 he didn't want to agree. He didn't even look at the screen. He didn't want to accept that.
Everything about the 2 faces appeared to be a perfect match. The eyes, the nose, finally and especially the mouth. Using a different computer, Lillian even managed to turn up the corners of the self-portrait's mouth and approximate the famous Mona Lisa smile. In addition, a comparison of the foreheads revealed a baffling curiosity.
An extremely important clue was that the supraorbital ridge that is very prominent in the Mona Lisa image and in Leonardo's self-portrait is found in almost all males, over 90% males. Rarely would you see that in a female head.
The conclusions seem preposterous. Had Leonardo perpetrated an incredible practical joke and actually served as the model for the woman often deemed the world's most beautiful? In January of 1987, Lillian Schwartz took her findings to magazine publisher WICK ALLISON.
Initially, I was very skeptical of Lillian's discovery. But when I got to understand the very detailed work being done in the laboratory, it started to make not only sense to me that this was the answer, but as we got to know more about human facial characteristics, that it was the only answer.
There's certain things that right away would puzzle an art historian. One is that the images, Leonardo's images, say the Mona Lisa, is remarkable precisely for the fact that it's not very distinct. The outlines of the face are not very strongly marked. There's a shadow under the nose, so you can't tell exactly how long it is. So if one wants to apply a scale, there's nothing that tells you exactly where that scale should go. In other words, you're placing something very specific on top of something that's not very specific.
Professor Brandt is also skeptical about whether the drawing is a self-portrait. If the drawing is by Leonardo, its style suggests a date when he would not yet have looked so old. Some in the art world believe the portrait was actually drawn by a clever forger.
So, Lillian, how's it going?
Oh, hi. Well, I found something really interesting here.
Lillian Schwartz refused to back down in the face of mounting criticism. She set out to prove her theory.
And compare that to the...
Eventually, Lillian came across this study of an Italian duchess named Isabella that many believe was a preliminary sketch for the Mona Lisa. When Lillian compared the drawing of Isabella to an X-ray of the painting, she found that it matched an undersketch that people had always assumed was the Mona Lisa. For Lillian, it was the final crucial detail.
I'm convinced that Leonardo started with Isabella, and then he used himself to complete this work of art, changed much of what was the Duchess, incorporating his own dimensions and forehead to create this feigned, this fictionalized face.
When you take all the evidence of art history, all the things we know about Leonardo, when you take the technical applications of Lillian's work, Lillian's theory holds up. On reflection, I am more convinced than ever that it's the answer.
However, Professor Kathleen Brandt argues that most everything about Lillian's theory conflicts with Leonardo's own philosophy about art.
Leonardo cautioned artists that every painter somehow paints himself. That is, that his own self-image is somehow inherent in his images of others. Leonardo says we have to try to counteract that. So therefore, it would be absolutely a contradiction if he should willingly impose his image into that of a young woman.
Did Leonardo da Vinci serve as his own model for the world's most celebrated painting? Or have some scholars and artists jumped to hasty conclusions? For 500 years, people have wondered who posed for the Mona Lisa, yet she has refused to divulge her secrets. Perhaps that is why she is smiling. When we return, a grieving husband becomes a suspect in the mysterious disappearance of his wife.
I had nothing to do with my wife's disappearance. I would like to think that she's still alive. But I do feel that it's possible it could go the other way too. I want to know that she is alive.
Doreen.
On March 29th, 1990,
Doreen?
Stephen Marfio of Johnston, Rhode Island, came home from work to find his house oddly silent, empty. A small suitcase was missing, and Stephen's wife of 12 years, Doreen, was nowhere to be found.
Doreen?
I started looking for the clothes. I noticed some jeans, a couple of shirts were missing, blouses. I checked a small safe that we used to have, and I noticed that there's some money out of it. There's probably a few hundred in there that was gone. Other than that, the car was in the yard. There were no notes, no letters, nothing.
Doreen Marfio was 34 years old when she disappeared. Since then, there have been several unconfirmed sightings of her, but beyond that, nothing. No phone calls, no paper trail, no body. Over the past 3 years, Stephen Marfio has spent thousands of dollars searching for his wife, who he believes is still alive. He has publicized the case on television and newspapers and is offering a $5,000 reward. The police, however, become convinced that Doreen was murdered. And Stephen Marfio has discovered that when someone disappears for no apparent reason, the most obvious suspect is the person who knew them best. Stephen Marfio met Doreen Dobson in 1976 and quickly found they both enjoyed active lifestyles. 2 years later, they were married. Stephen worked in the jewelry business and enjoyed weightlifting and driving fast cars. Doreen was a successful career woman, a purchase manager at the Rhode Island School of Design. With their similar outgoing personalities, Doreen and Stephen seemed the perfect match.
Hello. Hi, Mr. Crandall.
But in the fall of 1989, a crack appeared in the Marfio's perfect world. That October, Doreen abruptly quit her job and said she needed a change.
No, it's fine. I just...
It was a surprise to her bosses as well as myself and her friends and mother.
I've enjoyed working with you, too. Okay. Okay, well, take care.
You just don't quit a job and not go anywhere. She's not the type to just leave for no reason.
According to Stephen, Doreen's behavior grew increasingly erratic, to the point that she seemed on the verge of a nervous breakdown.
From a strong, independent woman, she became very weak, very unassured of herself, basically a nervous wreck in a matter of weeks.
Doreen, do you know what time it is?
I know. Look, just go back to bed. I'll be there in a couple of minutes, okay?
Doreen, please. What is it? Please tell me what's wrong. Is it me? Is it something I did?
No, it's not you. It's me.
When I did try and push the issue, she would get more hysterical.
I can't talk about it. I can't.
I remember a couple times she said, I think I'm having a breakdown. And tears would come down and she would just shake. All I could do was hold her.
Please. Please talk to me. Don't shut me out like
We always could talk about everything before. Why not now? She said, I can't at this time. I will tell you, but I can't at this time. And I never did find out.
Talk to me, please.
Stephen says that Doreen's bizarre behavior continued until the day she disappeared.
Hi, Laura. Hi, is Doreen there? No.
Stephen admits he did nothing for 2 days after Doreen vanished, assuming she needed some time alone to sort things out.
No, really, there's nothing to worry
Finally,
about.
he called Doreen's mother,
Well,
but she had not seen or talked to her daughter in a
What
week.
happens is I really think she went away to get a few days by herself to clear her head.
When Steve called me in the morning, he sounded strange. I said, there's something wrong. Then he called in the afternoon. Right away, I knew. I told him, call the police. Now, don't wait.
So I invited
The police questioned Doreen's family and friends. However, no one knew what might have prompted her to just pick up and walk away. Then a phone call took the investigation in a new direction.
I just called Stephen Monfield back. He said he had Doreen followed around by 2 private investigators for like 11 months. After I got off the phone,
I didn't think it was anything major, but I felt something wasn't right. So I'm the type, if something's not right, I want to find out what it is. So I did hire a private investigator, on and off for a year, maybe a few hours a month, to follow her once in a while, because I didn't know what was going on. I just felt that there was something wrong. But they never found anything.
Basically, what you have is you have a man who has a personality, who has his wife followed around for 11 months for no reason at all. And this same man, later on down the road, his wife disappears. She's missing for 2 days. And he has no concern to follow her or call her or to report it to the police. I mean, that's totally inconsistent with his personality when he has her followed around for no reason. Here you have your wife missing now for 2 days, and you don't think anything unusual? You don't make any phone calls or call the police? It's not consistent.
Authorities had nothing but suspicions. On the one hand, there was nothing to indicate that Doreen was still alive. On the other hand, there was no evidence that she had met with foul play. Then on June 13, 1990, 2.5 months after Doreen disappeared, police got their first break in the case when they received 2 anonymous letters. In the first letter, opened by investigators, the author attacked Doreen's character and accused her of cheating on her husband, saying, among other things,
although on the outside she personifies class, beauty, and professionalism, in reality, she is nothing more than a cheap harlot. Her promotions were achieved by her sexual prowess rather than management or leadership abilities.
The first letter that we received mentioned names of people that she was involved with that we spoke to, who were totally surprised to even have the police question that their name was even mentioned in this investigation. One of them was an elderly gentleman. I mean, we talked to co-workers. There was absolutely no inclination of Doreen having an affair with anyone. Her co-worker says that was totally out of her character. She had mentioned just in normal conversation with her co-workers that that's something she would never be involved in or tolerate, was any type of marital affairs, even long before she disappeared.
However, according to Doreen's sister, Doreen had once considered leaving Stephen for another man, not 1 year before she vanished, but 10 years earlier.
She was having an affair, and the guy that she was having the affair with was leaving, or wanted to have her leave with him to wherever he was going. She was pretty worried and very upset about what she should do, and she came to me and eventually to my husband to talk about it. And we all decided that probably the best thing she should do was not do what she was thinking of doing. So this had been a thought that had passed through her head before.
The second letter was even more disturbing than the first. This letter gave a chilling account of how Stephen Marfio had allegedly murdered his wife.
Stephen got hot under the collar. He made for couch and strangled Doreen. On a narrow dirt road, he stopped and deposited wife's body in reeds in a pond.
When we first received these letters, the captain and I felt as though that Stephen Marfio may have been the author of these letters. Based on some of the information that was contained, the contents, he would have only been the one to know these contents. What we did at that point was to reaffirm our belief. We had him sent up to Syracuse University and had him examined by Dr. Murray MIRON, who's an expert in psycholinguistics, for his opinion as who the author may have been.
Well, it's got to be of someone who knew Doreen quite well, close to the family, the Marfios. And then one says that the easiest and simplest account of this was it was designed to deceive the authorities.
In his report, Dr. Myron pointed a finger directly at Stephen Marfio. Myron concluded that Marfio probably wrote both letters and was, quote, a logical suspect in the murder of his wife.
I did not type any letters. They're police, they can say whatever they want. And they do, and they get away with it. But I'm really getting tired of the accusations and the allegations. Innuendos. If you have something, bring it forward.
The police seized several typewriters to which Stephen had access. A comparison of type styles revealed that the first letter had indeed been written on a typewriter belonging to one of Stephen's close relatives.
Establishes for the first time a linkage between the document, the instrument, and a suspect. So it was a major importance to us. And I mean, it's like a fingerprint as far as identification.
It's easy for them to suspect the spouse. And they've been proved wrong before, and they'll be proven wrong again.
Everybody calls me an optimist, and everybody says, oh, Steve killed her. But I don't believe that at all. None of his friends do as well, the ones that I know that I've talked to. I myself don't. The police do, but there is no evidence.
They've tried to convince me that he did do it. There's a possibility. But in my mind, when I see the way Steve acts when a mail comes, a phone rings, as I said, that goes back. He still thinks that she's alive.
Today, Stephen Marfio lives in the same house that he and Doreen shared for 12 years. The police still believe that Stephen is the only person responsible for the disappearance of his wife, although they lack enough evidence to charge him at this time.
I had nothing to do with my wife's disappearance, nor do I know where she is. I would like to think that she's still alive, but I do feel that it's possible it could go the other way too, but I want to know that she is alive.
Next, a businessman vanishes after scamming the government out of millions of dollars. April 6, 1993, off the coast of Louisiana, near the mouth of the Mississippi River.
Show me that hole? Yeah, I'm going to show you that hole down there if you can keep up.
For businessman Raymond Young, it had been a perfect day. Since dawn, he and his son Edward, along with two friends, had been enjoying a favorite activity, scuba diving. At 6 p.m., Raymond and Edward decided to make one final dive. 20 minutes later, a panicked Edward surfaced alone.
Help!
Dad? No, I haven't seen him anywhere.
The peaceful outing had turned into a nightmare. Raymond Young was missing. A massive search would turn up nothing, and Young's family assumed he had drowned. However, the authorities are convinced that Raymond Young is alive and well, and that he staged his own disappearance.
Raymond Young was the type of person who liked to gamble. He was a chance taker. He spent millions of dollars in his activities. He liked to live the good lifestyle, and he saw that he could make big money fast.
Raymond Young was a flashy self-made millionaire who owned and operated a wholesale fuel company on Marco Island, Florida.
Message was right. Opportunity of a decade. No, would I lie to you? Come on, buddy.
Young set up the company to distribute diesel fuel for offshore marine use. Because he supposedly sold to wholesalers only, Young was exempt from paying federal excise taxes. However, when customs officials discovered that millions of dollars were flowing in and out of Young's personal bank accounts, they began to suspect that his real business was scamming the government. In reality, Raymond Young had been selling his fuel to retail gas stations throughout the state of Texas and pocketing the money he should have been paying in taxes, an estimated 40 cents per gallon sold.
40 cents a gallon may not seem like a lot of money, but when you multiply that by the hundreds of thousands of gallons that Ray Young was distributing, this took place over 2 to 3 year period of time, so he could have, in actuality, have defrauded the government for an excess of $15 million.
In October of 1991, the IRS and U.S. Customs Service launched a joint investigation into Young's activities. Simultaneously, Young began to liquidate his assets. Eventually, the authorities would decide to charge Raymond Young with 17 counts of tax evasion. But Young left Florida while the investigation was still underway. In May of 1992, Young surfaced in New Orleans. Federal agents set up a surveillance and observed his Mercedes parked alongside a luxury yacht which was being primed for an ocean voyage. Although the vessel was flying a foreign flag, records confirmed that the boat belonged to Raymond Young.
Somebody new's up on the bridge. That could be our man. It is our man. Let's get him.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
When Raymond Young was arrested, by all indications, Raymond did not think he was going to be found guilty on these charges. Had told all of his friends that he would not be convicted and felt very confident that that would be the case.
Ray, wait. Now that was a totally unexpected verdict.
Raymond Young could not have been more wrong. In January of 1993, he was found guilty on 16 counts.
Counselor, I am not going to prison.
Ray, don't do anything foolish.
Even though Young faced up to 13 years in prison, he was eventually granted bail to clean up his personal and business affairs. 2 days before he was to be sentenced, Raymond Young went scuba diving in the Gulf of Mexico and has not been seen since. On our next Unsolved Mysteries, a modern-day cowboy is found shot to death and his girlfriend turns up missing. Is she also dead, or is she the key figure in a sinister murder plot?
My daughter did not kill that man. I would like to think she's still alive, but I believe she's dead. I've come to terms with God. I just want him to help me settle this case, to find out who did it and let them pay the penalty that they should pay.
For every mystery, there is someone, somewhere, who knows the truth. Perhaps that someone is watching. See you next Wednesday.